You let one ant stay.
Do something bad to us, we are going to do things to you that have never been done before.
What the is that, dude?
Well, howdy, folks. Hope you're doing all right on a Monday in between Christmas and New Year, the second last day of 2024. If it's been one of those shit years, then I hope that 2025 is going to be a lot brighter for you all. I really do believe it will be. I don't know if Dusty Silk is in the room yet tonight. Dusty has been on the Gold Coast for Christmas holidays and had to go home rather unexpectedly. Teenage daughters being what they are and New Year's Eve being what it is, they wanted to be with friends. Who knew? There you go, Dusty. Good on you, man. But glad you had a safe trip home, and I'm really sorry that we didn't get the chance to catch up. But either I'm coming to Tamworth or you're coming back up here, and we'll definitely do it next time. So my apologies. What that was first in the room tonight. Scotty, the news in 2 on Red Alert. Debs. Dusty was in then. Peg's place, and hope you've had a great Christmas, guys. The Stabinator, boom, alaka bam. I love the way Sab comes into the room, you know, boom, alaka bam. I just want to see the flash and the re at the end, you know, boom, alaka bam, re. Every time I see that, I'm transported back to Monty Python and the Holy Grail, and we are the knights that say, we are no longer the knights that say ni. We are the knights that say, eki, 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 fatang. That'll mean something to those of you who like Monty Python. And for those of you who don't like Monty Python, you're heathens. Oh, God, no sense of humor at all. Paul, hope you're doing well, mate. Aussie Sue, God love you. I hope you had a great Christmas with the family up north. And rain's coming your way, I'm told. So there might be a bit of water around your part of the world, which could be a good or a bad thing, depending on how much you've had recently. Katrina, nice to have you in. Sunflower, I'm not sure if you got a message back from me after the text message that you sent. If you didn't get a message back from me, that will be because I've had fat finger disease, and while I typed one, I may not have sent it. I have this niggling in the back of my head now that I've seen your name for some reason. So thank you for your text over Christmas, and I hope you and the family had a wonderful time. It's always nice to be surrounded by grandbabies and doing all that sort of shit. So I really hope you guys had a great Christmas, and your new year is going to be spectacular, and hopefully hold some breakthroughs. God help. God hopes. We hope that God can bring us the med beds. There is a lot of talk about them. Personally, I'm not as convinced that they are. Well, I know they are not operating. If they are here in the country, they are definitely not operating and are inoperable. Like, they're not, even if you turned them on, they're not going to work. So for a variety of reasons, I'm still not extremely hopeful that these med beds are going to be in our immediate future, but maybe within the next couple of years, please God. I want to thank everybody. I'm not sure if Margie's in the show tonight live, but I was talking to Margie Sedgman just Christmas Day maybe, or just after Christmas, and she's home, and I wanted to thank you, everybody who prayed for Margie, because I've got to be honest, I've not heard her sound so good in years, since well before she got sick. So I was much heartened, and so is she. Things are improving in her world pretty well. She's still got some hills to climb, but they're no longer huge mountains. And, fingers crossed, all things being equal in a beautiful world, we'll have Margie for a few years yet, or at least until the med beds get here. So thank you to everybody, and if you continue your prayers for her, it would be greatly appreciated. The Rockin' Housewife is in the house. I hope your Christmas went really well. Sounds like it would have been a rockin' good Christmas if that's the way things are. Michelle Bradley Smith, I hope you're okay in your part of the world. I haven't seen that there's bushfires down your way, so not to say that there won't be, but at the moment, fingers crossed, not so much. I believe the Grampians bushfires now are, if not under control, then burning in areas that it doesn't really matter. So I hope everybody that has property down that way, including Trevor the Prepper, who got us kicked off one of the YouTube channels with what he said the other night, but only one of them. The Voice of Freedom channel, in case you're wondering, is down for another week. And they've bunged us on. I don't know. They couldn't even play me what we'd said wrong. They don't even bother giving examples anymore. But it was a medical misinformation thing, and of course, I'm pretty confident it would have had something to do with what Trevor was talking about toward the end of our show. And I was going to edit it out for the YouTube thing, but time got away from me, and I just uploaded it and played it out. And maybe should have done a little bit of an edit on that one. But anyway, it's only 7 days, and we'll be back. What else have I got here? DM's in the house. Paul, I think I've said hello to you. If I haven't said hello to you yet, I'm very sorry. If I've missed you, I will come back at some stage. Tonight, well, an interesting chat tonight. It's coming up on 3 years since anywhere between 1 and 2 million people, depending on which side of the fence you stand on, or 10,000 to 2 million people turned up in Canberra to just let everybody know how unhappy we were with the current state of play on a variety of levels. Now, it was one of the, if not the greatest movement Australia has ever seen of civilians marching on their capital. And of course, the politicians turned on us through their enforcement arms. Now, on that day, a number of people gained significant injuries. A number of people were arrested, and a number of people have been processed through the ACT court system for their involvement on the days. Now, all of them, I believe, except one, have been through the courts or have had their cases thrown out or dismissed. And in most cases, I believe it was thrown out or dismissed. And in at least 2 significant cases, they did try and fight those in court, and the DPP lost, which I think is a significant factor. However, when you dig a little deeper into particularly one of those wins, it wouldn't have happened if there hadn't been a lot of extra video footage now that supported the driver of the vehicle in question. Now, tonight, we've got Michael and Paul Offe joining us again from the Freedom Truck. You might remember the Freedom Truck on the day in Canberra, surrounded by a couple of 100,000 people, let's just say, in its immediate vicinity, was only, I think, on its 2nd day in Canberra and its 3rd day on the road after Paul Offe had built this thing up into what was to be a movie prop. It was going to star in a movie on the Gold Coast. And then Paul had gone and got his limo license and was going to be doing special rides around the Gold Coast, as you can do in anything from a duck to a bloody fire truck to a 24-seat stretch limo, if that's what you want. But Paul was going to add to the flavour of the Gold Coast, and you would have been able to go for rides in this ostensibly famous movie truck. He thought he would take it on a run to Canberra, and he drove it down. He made a run into town, filled it up full of groceries for everybody at Epic, and then brought it all back. He did a number of those runs across the course of his time there, until the big protest, where he was part of a 3-truck convoy, I think it was, that made its way with police support all the way to Parliament House. It was at Parliament House where things got a little difficult, and from events that happened there, Paul is now facing a number of fairly significant charges, which the public prosecutor in Canberra just don't seem to want to let go of for whatever reason. I think I know exactly what that reason is. That reason is money. And if you want to fight their reason for money, you need money to do it, as is the case with everybody when they go into the court system. However, this is a Supreme Court hearing, or not hearing, a Supreme Court trial. And to go into one of those, you need a barrister, and you need people to support the barrister. And so the boys, while having raised a significant amount of money for Paul's defence already, are always looking for more donations. I'll bring them in now so that we can have a bit of a talk. Good evening, Paul and Michael Offe. Gentlemen, happy Christmas, happy New Year. I hope life goes well for both of you.
G'day, Carl. How's it going?
Good evening, everybody.
Yeah, good, mate, good. So, Paul, I guess you've got to be feeling a little bit nervous. The trial is coming up early next year. How are you feeling in yourself at the moment?
I guess it's a pretty stressful situation with the whole thing, especially when I guess you kind of believe in Australia to have some sort of justice system, and you more and more you're involved, you realise there's no justice. It's just who has the money to back them, really, unfortunately. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it is unbelievably difficult these days to get a fair trial unless you have got a lot of money. And the degree of fairness I think you get depends on how much money you've got. And, you know, the more expensive the lawyer, and I'm not saying that's a better lawyer, I'm just saying the more expensive, the court perceives more value. And you might be able to negotiate your way out of it. Michael, that seems to have been what they've tried with Paul from the get-go, from our early meetings with them in Canberra with legal aid. They've always been trying to negotiate their way down to lesser charges, trying to get some dismissed. And at times, the DPP have come back and said, well, we're prepared to let this go and this go, but you've got to plead guilty to this, that, and the other. Can you just explain the thinking behind your case at the moment, and how they've played that, negotiating, bargaining chip out?
Well, basically, there's been talk on a couple of occasions where there's been suggestion that plead guilty to 5 of the 6 charges, and they'd drop the most serious, which, when Paul doesn't believe he's guilty of pretty much any of the charges, it's not exactly much of a win. Doesn't help anyone else in the country stop this insanity, which is essentially just using a slightly shonky system to make an example of people and tie them up in a situation that they either run out of money to defend, or they ultimately they just want them to plead guilty to some stuff. They don't really even seem to care some of the time how little, as long as they plead guilty. That way they can never say that they brought unjust charges. Whereas in this case, and people like Dr. Bruce Pay and Nick Patterson and a whole lot of other people, and in a different context, but even Dr. William Bay just recently, all those actions, whichever way they've been handled, his wasn't a legal action, it was an administrative action on behalf of a regulating body. All those actions have been done out of the scope of their real role as to what they're supposed to be doing. I mean, situations like Nick Patterson's situation and Paul's, they're really ultimately their job on those situations is to be keeping the peace and make things run smoothly without any major incidents, not concocting a major incident, and then you use the somewhat messy legal system to hamstring the person to a point that hopefully the system wins by default.
Yep. And in which case, it's not about justice; it's about money.
Well, I'd say it's actually probably, obviously money comes into it, but I'd say it's probably much more about control, would be my interpretation, because they only use this system money is what is required to try and beat it, unfortunately, and truth. I mean, we've got truth on our side. All these cases have. Money is just the tool to play the game in the system to try and get the justice that should be available from the beginning. The real reasoning, I would say, behind all these cases is about power and control, because if you don't have some serious examples that you can make, everyone else will sort of feel a little bit more like they can say no to certain things or stand up to certain things. So they need some high profile cases, and also people like, Nick Patterson were trying to stop, he and his crew were trying to stop unreasonable police arrests and issues going on there where the police were trying to antagonise people to cause arrests, from what I understand. I wasn't there, but and in Paul's circumstance, well, he was a reasonably high profile sort of attraction on the day, with a lot of people clearly in support of wanting him there, and he was also sort of providing a bit of a show with the people, which no ill intent anywhere. But it's obviously something it's a sudden target, because they can't. If you're trying to control a group of people, you can't have people that stand out or do things differently, because that obviously is dangerous. Yep. So yeah, that would be my interpretation.
And the vehicle itself, of course, it's some $230,000 worth of vehicle that would have become something of a totem to everybody there, because it stood out so much from every other truck that was at the event. The police and the officials could tell that people were going to flock to this truck because it was a standout. And Paul's got a great story to tell as well. So he's a genuine, likable young man who's suffered a couple of terrible brain injuries. He's lucky that he's still, able to ride a motorbike and talk. Lucky that he's still with us, to be honest. So I think in a lot of cases, what they wanted to do is stop the edification, if you like, of the vehicle and anybody associated with it. And of course, one of the people associated heavily with it on the day, aside from Paul driving it, was the Aussie Cossack, who was running along beside it, behind it, in front of it, and around it for pretty much its entire journey up to Parliament House.
Well, certainly on the last half anyway, Paul had never met the Cossack, and that just sort of happened by an unexpected coincidence that all occurred. And unfortunately, it sort of probably complicated matters fairly significantly as well. Police, I think, probably seemed to form the opinion that Paul was just his driver, and that he was the one behind the whole thing, perhaps, or direct. They seem to be wanting to talk to him rather than actually giving any decent communication or clear direction to Paul, which sort of went against Paul. So it was a little bit.
Paul, just on that, can I just ask you, mate? I know driving a big vehicle, you get a bit nervous when you're going into streets or areas that you've never been in before. Canberra was that for you, particularly around the parliamentary circle. How difficult is it for a bloke in your position to handle a vehicle that's 10 tonne or more, around 200,000 people, who just in your immediate area, let's call it 100,000, let's call it 20,000 people in your immediate area, standing on the side of footpaths, their toes hanging over the edge of gutters? How hard is it for you to drive a vehicle like that through a crowd? And clearly, you weren't on the throttle doing this. You were, at walking or below walking pace the whole time.
One thing, sorry, I was just going to say one thing. When you said driving through a crowd, he wasn't actually driving through a crowd. The crowd were actually walking with him.
Well, that's
He
right.
was
Sorry,
essentially
yes,
part
yeah,
of the
true.
procession. So, when you think about that in your mind, it's quite different. Like they were actually walking with him, so he wasn't, at the same sort of pace. Sorry,
Yeah,
continue.
true that. Sorry, Paul.
Yeah, well, as you know, since you've got your bus happening and studio, you definitely end up very, I guess, focused on certain things around you, trying to, you know, navigate, work out where you're going, what's going on, what's happening. It is definitely stressful. Massively.
Well, and the fact that
Competitive.
Michael says people are walking beside you with you,
Mhm.
if you make a change at the steering wheel, your left or right rear wheels are going to run over somebody's feet that's walking beside you. They're the kinds of decisions you have to make, aren't they?
Yeah, I guess the thing with that day is I guess the crowd were also in very much support of the whole day and the truck, so they kind of ushering me along, I guess, as well a bit. But yeah, it's got to be it's very tiring driving, that's for sure. With heavy
Takes a
vehicles.
great deal of concentration and a great deal of
Yeah.
focus, particularly when there's a lot of people around you. And
I've seen some of the internal dash cam footage of that period of time, and he's actually not really looking directly in his immediate forward area. He's looking a lot in his mirrors left and right constantly to make sure that no one's getting too close to the truck and getting in a path that's not wise, while also then glancing back and forward sort of a bit further afield down the front, out the front.
well,
keeping
he
an
was
eye
he
on
was
as
following.
well.
He was initially following two other vehicles, I think, wasn't it? And I mean, that's where my focus would be on where those vehicles are going, making sure, of course, that there's nobody getting in between me and those vehicles or in a dangerous manner. But when there's so many people around and of all ages and sizes, I can't imagine how much focus that would have taken. You'd be wrung out by the end of driving up there. So at this point in time, we're hoping that Nick Patterson can join us. He had agreed to, and then apparently has gone and joined another webinar, and he's trying to get out of it. But we'll see how that happens.
I think he's not far away, from what I understand from a last message I got from him.
Okay, cool. So you guys have had some significant trials and tribulations when it comes to getting representation on this case. And that is because there has been one wrinkle in your case that seems to be very different to anybody else that day. And that is that a very shady bunch of lawyers called COCA have got involved in your case and have put, if you like, a lien over the truck, meaning that you have not, for nearly 3 years now, been able to see, gain access, or use the vehicle in any way, shape, or form. Now, this has been the sticking point all the way along. I remember early negotiations where if they were to return the truck, Paul may have pled guilty to one or two much lesser charges, but there has never been any negotiation on that returning of the truck point. Do we know why that is?
It's very loose and open-ended when they make suggestions that could be possible. But I think the only avenue that they were prepared would have required potential running foul of up to about 10 years of charges potentially. But no, I think the COCA, which is an acronym for confiscation of criminal assets, which by definition shouldn't even really apply in this circumstance, because technically, and even in its technical, at best, performance manner that it's supposedly designed for, it's a relatively you could argue, probably unjust set of act or laws, in that it's, instead of being it's used for people that are found to be criminally at fault, but it's actually not in under a criminal code. It's under a civil code, which doesn't have a requirement of burden of proof. It's basically, if they have a suspicion of or a belief of, they can utilize, they can find you essentially guilty of something, even if there's no hard evidence for it. So it makes them a very loose set of laws that can be basically used. It's really the epitome of lawfare. Because you don't have to, in these circumstances, someone can, I've actually heard of stories, and usually these laws are used around people that are possibly running drugs or sort of heavy organised crime, which in those circumstances, obviously people that are actually found to be guilty of serious offences like that, obviously there should be penalties, but whether seizing their private assets is one of them, well, that's quite debatable. But even if it were, by running them in the civil court, they can be found not guilty of the charges in a criminal court because there wasn't enough evidence to convict them, but they can still have their house or their car or everything else taken away from them and sold on behalf of the state.
And they can have that done very surreptitiously, because they tried to do that with the truck, didn't they?
Well, so they basically put through an application to the court for a seizure of the vehicle under those laws. And then when Paul's original legal representation turned around and said this is absolutely ridiculous, the charges that he's been accused of are simply minor traffic offences. Because he raised that, they thought, we might be on slightly slim ground. They did spend a lot of time writing a big, long list of explanations as to why they didn't believe they were slim charges to be used for it. But then magically, a few weeks later, they charged him with a very significant charge of driving at police, which had never even been spoken of or on the day or in the immediate time since. And so 2 months after the event, he's randomly handed a charge with a 15-year potential 15-year jail term if found guilty to the full depth of it. And that would appear to have basically been a response to prevent the court ordering in favour of the return of the truck. So that basically hamstrung getting the truck back. They then basically put it under a confiscation order, which means that it sits in their possession until the outcome of the criminal trial. Should he be found not guilty of all charges, you would think by automatic nature the coca confiscation would be turned over and the truck would be returned. But that's not actually the case. You then have to go back to a civil court and start another whole proceeding to try and get your property released. At which point, if they decide that they have sufficient suspicion that you are guilty of certain things that they may not be able to fully prove, such as it was used in the commission of a crime or this, that, or the other, or they suspect that it may have been purchased with proceeds of crime, both of which are completely outrageous in this circumstance, they then can potentially win a court order to sell it. Now, clearly, I think the other reason that probably put them on the path of trying to do this was they found out fairly early in the piece, well, pretty much after they arrested Paul, that it was his primary asset. He had set it up as a business, or was in the process of setting up as a business to be able to get him earn an income around his health issues, that would enable him to work certain hours, odd hours that wouldn't be a normal daily job, and be able to get himself off of disability pension. That was his goal. And they also knew that it had a fair bit of dollar value, which just so happens to be probably about a similar amount to what it costs to run a legal defence for a case like this. So knowing that he was a pensioner with no money and that he'd just done everything, including selling his TV a couple of weeks before to pay for the last work on the truck, they thought, well, hang on, and I'm surmising, but it seems to be where the evidence points, if we seize that, take it away, that prevents him being able to defend himself. That means that we ultimately get a guilty plea. The case gets wiped out of the way, and we don't come unstuck, and the person that they charge falls down badly and gets made a big example of.
Yeah. And it should be noted to everybody that if that asset gets sold, it's my understanding that the funds raised from any of those seized assets go into a trust that is administered by the biggest names in law firms in Canberra.
Yeah, the very profession that seemed to be involved in the seizure.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's another ginormous case going on at the moment in Australia as well, that the same tactic has been put into use as well, and that's a guy by the name of Dan Dugan, or Duggan, I'm not sure how it's pronounced, and they're trying to extradite him to the US for charges that don't even apply in Australia, and to even enable an extradition, I believe they added a new law in Australia to support it. But early in the piece, his wife after he'd been put into solitary confinement, imprisoned, his wife had organised to sell their farm to be able to cover the potential legal costs of trying to get him a legal defence. And I believe it was maybe 2 days before the settlement took place, the AFP on behalf of the US government seized the property under COCA laws. So it's just a big boys game, it seems.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're not familiar with the Duggan case, he is a former fighter pilot who was also a Marine. I think it was a Marine. And once he left the service and found obviously an Australian girl, at some point or other he became a flight training officer and wound up training, I assume, somewhere in the Middle East or Asia, training
I think it was Africa, actually.
Africa, right. And wound up training what the US government now believe are Chinese pilots. So obviously the concern there is that they've given, he's given them, US fighter tactics, that kind of thing. This guy's a former F-16 pilot or something. But the guy's been out of active service for 15 years or more. So any tactics that they used to have changed a bit.
Yeah, I think he was training civil pilots anyway. As far as it was civil flight school, and I think he was, as far as he knew, he was training civil pilots. And I believe all the UK British pilots that were involved in the flight school, the UK government pretty much turned around and said there's no case to answer and told the US to get packing.
Yeah, well, they've just sat through God knows how many years of Julian Assange, so they probably don't have any appetite for another one of those sorts of battles. And it looks like the Australian government, how surprising, just rolled over like a sick puppy.
Who knows? But yeah, it's interesting to see the similarities there where they seize your assets to prevent you being able to fund your legal defence. That's the interesting point.
And it's certainly, like you say, a big boy's legal trick, and something they're very, very happy to use at the earliest opportunity. If you look like you're going to push back against them, they seem to drag this COCA group out of nowhere. Now,
well, it's actually a pretty big worry. I was going to say it's a pretty big worry for pretty much anyone in business, essentially, these days. Like,
Yeah.
you know, if they can do that easily, it doesn't take too much to run. I mean, even think of Kerry Packer and the times he was dragged into Parliament and about trying to claim that he was evading tax, and he put them in their place saying they didn't spend it very wisely. So, of course, you should be legally trying to reduce your tax bill. But, you know, think of a scenario like that and they go, well, we've got these laws in the last 5 or 10 years that we can use. Well, we'll just seize all of Kerry Packer's assets. I mean, we can't prove that he was actually doing anything dodgy, but we don't need to because it's in a civil court.
Yeah.
You know? So it is a bit of a worry.
It is. So looks like Nick's just joined us, so we'll bring him up because joined at a fortuitous time. G'day, Nick. Nice to have you on the Voice of Freedom.
G'day, boys. How are you?
Very decent indeed, mate. Firstly, congratulations or Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Congratulations on the result that you've taken a couple of years to get. It's been a significant battle for you, and obviously you've come on tonight in support of Paul in his legal battle as well. You guys have obviously had the chance to discuss what's going on, and while the situation in the cities are different, your particular circumstances where it was found that the police were almost targeting you and your group and inciting you and your group, it's opened some interesting avenues of inquiry into what's going on with Paul at the moment. So what are your thoughts on what they're doing to Paul?
Well, it's just political policing, right? Because if you understand that the states, these corrupt states and the corrupt officials get their power from the false narrative that they create. It's always a false narrative. And it's not really the states. The states are obviously, in this case, are used by big corporations that are selling toxic chemicals to people or put into their arms. So they're using a false narrative, and they don't want people to break down that false narrative because you're effectively breaking down their cash cow. So people who stand up and are willing to suffer and endure publicly, which then the result of that is a lot of people see it and they become conflicted against the state officers who are doing and harming people for doing something that is morally correct, right? So that's how we break down the narrative when we rally en masse. People see that and they go, you know what, this narrative is a heap of crap. Yeah, it doesn't make sense. What are we doing, right? And they start to question it, and eventually the narrative breaks down. The way they stop people from doing that is they use really heavy-handed tactics on them. In Victoria, there was a whole bunch of us we had a platform. We all had different platforms. I had a platform that I was effectively kicked off. I was kicked off nearly everything, all the social media platforms. And I was targeted. I was given a full gag order on bail conditions that restricted my ability to speak. I hadn't been charged with incitement either. They were charging a lot of people with incitement, right? Which and falsely. And for the only reason for that is to silence people, right? Just like they wanted to take away they wanted to bring in a misinformation bill, which would effectively stop you from being able to speak. And already we have restrictions on what we can say on social media platforms. So what it shows us is that the greatest weapon we have is our speech, and it's very powerful in breaking down those strongholds and those false narratives, which the big corporates use governments to create, so that they can basically get more power. Obviously, we've got Paul and Michael. They're fighting a battle where basically the police have targeted him for that exact reason, that he's someone that they believe they could target, just put fear into anybody else who would dare stand up to try to break down a false narrative. Basically, it's you can't stand up to us, and if you do, we will demoralize you so much so that people who are seeing this will be too scared to stand up for their moral convictions which is what they want, because then no one will be inspired to fight against it. And I'll give you one quick example of what happened in Victoria, and obviously the whole country as well. But I know in Victoria we had police that were turning up at people's houses. I put in my house at midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. But what happened was we had these massive rallies in the city. One of them was the police from their own, because we organised these rallies with some other groups. There were 2 weeks in a row that were massive. One, the police from their own lips, they said had 340,000 people conservatively, and the week after was bigger than that one. Now, when that happens, the narrative's broken. At that point, we were seeing a lot of police leave, and eventually we ended up with about 30% of the police had left, and there was about another 20% of the police force who were on leave and taking annual leave. So you'd imagine 50% of your police force, who are the officers who are basically enforcing this crazy narrative onto people. The people above can't get the people below to enforce it anymore because the narrative's broken. Once they don't want to do it anymore and their heart's conflicted against it, I'm not doing this. I didn't sign up to be a police officer to do this. The narrative's gone. And that's what they don't want people to do. And you see the same thing in history with communist regimes where they went. But the problem is in those regimes, they're too harsh that they can't hold on to that power, because very quickly people are all conflicted as soon as they see someone getting killed or beaten to death. So they know how they've got more of a hidden way of demoralizing people and dragging things out and putting them through a demoralizing process without it being all, just bashing people up and torturing them like, communist regimes in the past. So that's basically what we're enduring. Is basically our recompense for standing up to the false narrative and trying to break it down. And that's the state's way of defending the false narrative created by their mates that are paying them by going after anyone who dares speak out. And that's all it is. It's basically a war between those who speak the truth and will inspire and invoke courage to stand up for moral principles, and those who don't have, and the ability for the state to control those who don't have any courage or conviction to stand up for moral principles.
For the last few years, Victoria has been known for its almost militarized police force and its lack of empathy and compassion. And your case in particular, but there are many, many other examples of just that. I would say it's probably the worst in Australia that I've seen personally. But have you noticed a change? Like, as you say, 50% of the police workforce either resigned, quit, walked away, or is on sick leave because they don't want to play the game. Have you seen any significant changes in Victoria that would mean that if you had another protest tomorrow with 100,000 people on the streets and went to the shrine, that you weren't going to get shot with rubber bullets?
I think I'd say the narrative is different now, and I think they overplayed their hand so far that, because what happens is, as information gets disseminated within communities, let's say the worst of those police officers that committed those crimes of shooting people with rubber bullets and all the rest of it, they would have family members that would be completely conflicted against them, speaking out against those people. I can't believe you did that. So over time, they will get worn down by those people that have ethics and morals, right? So I think that's a big part of it. That is probably the battle. It's a battle of ideology. It's like if you look at, I was reading an article by his last name's Dinesh D'Souza. It was about Christianity's influence over Western society. But it was interesting. They talked about the Revolutionary War, the American Revolution, and he was talking about how he was actually quoting from prominent people of the time. He said the war wasn't the revolution. The revolution started in the minds of men when they changed the way they viewed things, and then that's what then promoted the obviously the abolition of slavery and all the rest of it. So it's a mindset change, and that's definitely happened. I mean, we know it's happened. I mean, all those police that they tried to recruit again when they lowered the standards, they still can't get people to join the police force. They can't fill the ranks. So that tells us something, doesn't it? People don't want to do the job.
And they're bringing in untrained people from overseas who think it might be nice to be a police officer. These people, in most cases, don't have a great control or command of the English language, and are not wonderful examples. I've got one I could play you, but I won't right now. I want to move on just a little, if I can, Nick, and touch briefly on what looks to be your next step into politics, by the sounds of it. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the power of the... Sorry, Michael?
I was just going to say, I think Paul had an internet issue and he's just backstage again.
Oh, is he?
You know.
Oh, there he is.
Sorry.
Beg your pardon. I'll bring him back up. So, Nick, tell us about Power of the People.
Yeah, so that's a party that Tristan and I were setting up. It's probably not going to be... We're pretty confident it's not going to be registered in time for the federal election. I'm running with GAP at the moment, but there's three aspects to Power to People. There's an education component, and there's also an alliance between parties that we're setting up. The registering of the political party was only one aspect of that, sort of to give us standing to do the other parts. So I'm still very involved with them, but I'm also involved with Rod Cullerton with GAP. I had a good chat with Rod, and he said, "Look, your party's not registered yet. It took us, nearly a year to get ours registered, and they can flag you for all different reasons. And there's not a lot of time, and they're going to call an early election. So he asked me to go, and run in his party. So that's what I'm doing at the moment. But the idea is that we need people to go about, I think, politics in a different way. I mean, I would think that most people, if I went out in the street and talked to just random people, if I asked them what their opinion is on politics, it wouldn't be anything good.
No.
So the idea is we do like a re-education, and a lot of it's got to be social media, getting onto different platforms and talking about those. We need to inspire people and switch on that activation switch within people to inspire them to actually be their very best selves and to be motivated and focused on fixing the problems that we have here. And not all the external ones, like overseas wars and all the rest of it. I mean, why are we focusing on that stuff when we've got plenty of problems here that we actually could resolve and fix? So that's the reason for Tricky and I getting involved in it, and Maria Schmandy. It's just so that we can be a voice, because politics isn't the answer. I think invoking ideas into the minds of people is where we win, and having a louder voice is a really powerful weapon if you can do that. And I think part of running in this, like doing a Senate, running in the Senate and doing a campaign politically, that also motivates one to become much more active on social media and to speak out a lot more, because you've got like, it's almost like you've got a trainer there pushing you. You've got to get and reach as many people as you can. But I don't want to talk about all the stuff that people aren't interested in. I think most people are interested in things that affect them, and there's a lot of things that are affecting them now. Like cost of living is out of control for people. Yet we're giving away our natural resources to foreign corporations for nothing, and our politicians then go and work for those foreign corporations after they give away our natural resources to them. Like, why is that happening? Well, that's theft, and that's war. We're at war with that. We literally have people from within our society stealing our common wealth, which it belongs to us. Under the guise of some, they created some sort of a controversial way of being able to mitigate their liability for those losses that we incur because of the decisions they make. But effectively, if you just look at the brass of it, they're giving it away for nothing, and there's we and it's not something that we get any say in, right? So that's one big issue that I think we could deal with pretty quickly. But a big part of that is people don't know, and they don't know what they could do. So if we could reach a lot of people, like I think social media is a really, really powerful tool now. That's what Donald Trump did. He was very active on social media. that's the way to reach people. But it's hard because obviously, you can get kicked off social media, so you need to rely on other people's channels. And I think that's the best way. I was kicked off everything. I was kicked off, except for Telegram. I wasn't kicked off Telegram. I was kicked off everything else. But I was still able to have a voice because other people were able to give me a voice. I was able to get on other people's channels. So I think that's where the power is. It's with working with the people, not being divided, being allowed voice and talking to people about those situations that directly affect their lives. The fact that you can't afford to live because we've got all of this Commonwealth that's been given away for nothing to people that these politicians end up working for later on after they give away. I think it was like $149 billion worth of our natural gas given away, and that's what we know of. $28 billion. Yeah, and so these are the sorts of issues I think need to be raised, because I think most people, if they were fully aware of this, they would be so shocked. And then what you've got to do after that is, once you shock them with this information, you've got to provide them with a way to resolve the issue and to fix the problem. And you need to encourage them to have some courage and belief that they can fix the problem. And really what it comes down to is a whole lot of us working together and being willing to do the things that other people are too scared to do, because at some point we're going to have to potentially go beyond what we've done in the past to fix the problems. Otherwise, they're not going to be fixed, because the people that are committed to taking away everything from us and stealing everything from us and killing us, those same people are fully committed to this. Then they're not going to just stop because we ask them to. We have to go and force them to stop. And a lot of people are too scared. I might be breaking the law, mate. They're breaking the law and they're killing you. So it's up to you if you're going to have the guts to do the real laws, that conscience that we have inside of us anyway. That's what should be That's what should be motivating all of us anyway. So we just want to invoke that.
I think for a long time the police forces haven't been recruiting people with consciences, and if they have had a conscience, it's been removed from them during training, or in the advancement stages of the career. So, very sad. The cost of having a voice like this, obviously, whether it be a political voice or, in your case, and originally just your voice and your mates' voices, speaking out about something that you felt was a large injustice, and there were many others on your side. Obviously, there was a monetary cost. What was the personal cost to you? And, I know Paul's personal cost is pretty significant, so I imagine yours is the same.
Look, I was prosecuted 4 times by the police for different things. So I had 4 prosecutions. I represented myself on 3, so that brought the cost down a long way. And I was successful in those 3. But one of them, I invested a lot into that. But I had a lot of support from the community. So I knew that, and I learned this I was a professional fighter in the past, and I learned that, I used to get sponsorship to help me to be able to focus on fighting and to get all the things that I need. And what I learned was that get people that want to be part of your journey, rather than get someone as a sponsor who wants you to sell their product. I'll sponsor you, but I actually want you to promote my stuff. That's not what a real sponsor is. A sponsor is someone that believes in what you're doing and wants to be a part of it. Otherwise, you're just really working for the sponsor, right? So I learned that. I learned that as a fighter, and I kind of applied the same concept with how I got people to support me financially. So I wasn't fundraising. I was saying, if you believe in what I'm doing and you want to support me, I've got a custom donation page there. I'm happy for you to receive your help, and I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, which is what we have done. We ran a collateral challenge to the state of emergency. We had Brett Sutton was required to provide an affidavit. That never happened. We can review that too, because we've spoken to one of the top KCs in the country in appeals, and he's agreed that if the judge says that Brett Sutton and Jenny Makakos have to provide affidavits attesting to certain things, and they never do, and there's even a date that they were meant to provide it and they never did, then that's something that you could easily review. So we've got a lot there that we can review, but that cost me about $250,000, and I'm still trying to get the legal costs paid by the DPP for that, and we're going to be back in court in February for that. So they're fighting us. I mean, it's amazing to think that you can be dragged through court for years, and the DPP will have a ruling against them saying that the police have a ruling against them saying that that police committed unjustified violence, that they lied on their statements, and that they ran an abusive legal process against us. And then the DPP will say, yeah, but we're not going to pay your costs. It's madness. Yeah. So we're fighting them on that. And look, we will fight them. We'll fight them tooth and nail. But that's how I've been able to get support, is that I've been willing to go all the way with everything. And it's not been about anything else. It's been about the principle, and the principle is the most important thing. And when you're the underdog and you're standing up for your principle and you're promoting the idea of standing up for principles, a lot of people will back you because they see that what you're doing is good and it's needful. And it goes back to that biblical principle of many hands make light work. So if other people are helping to bear the financial burden, I can then just focus on the actual fight rather than having to bear. But I also had to close my gym down because when they broke my shoulder, I wasn't able to. I didn't have as many people coming into the gym, and it's hard to get people to come back when the gyms have been shut. It's not like the gyms open up and everybody comes back. You've actually got to get people to come back. That's the way it is with fitness. People stop, and then or they're doing other things, they're doing their own exercise somewhere, and you've got to try to get them back to your gym. It's not easy. Yeah. So that was hard, and they also took away my working with children's capacity.
Oh wow!
Right? Yeah, so that was 30% of my business. So wow. I couldn't work with kids because they, I'm this violent criminal, even though they're the violent ones. So I couldn't even subsidize that loss with doing more private coaching and holding pads for people because I had an injured shoulder as well. So it was,
wow,
yeah, it was tough.
They coming and then going.
All right, what I will say.
Sorry.
I'll just like to finish with I don't look at it in a negative though. I think it was a great experience to go through that because it makes you very tough. That's how you build that resilience up. You've got to go through those tough times, and if you look at it through that lens, I think it is very empowering. The tough times make you tough. You're not going to be, you're not going to become, strong if everything's done for you and it's easy. So that's the silver lining, I guess, in my mindset at least.
So, what's your advice to the boys then as we go into 2025 in a Supreme Court trial?
Yep, they need to just anchor down to their principles, because that's what's going to get you through. It's not going to be all the other stuff. It's your principles. What do you know is right about what you're doing and what's wrong about what they're doing? You've got to have clearly be able to express the reasons that this is an important case in the court, and you need to be able to express that to the community. Because if you get the community behind you, it becomes a lot easier, and then they can empower you. They can empower you with giving you a larger voice because there's other platforms that you can speak on and different channels, and also financially because money is power. You got people power, and then people can share knowledge, and knowledge is power. So if you put those things together, you're going to have a lot more power than if you just try to run a case like this by yourself.
Great advice.
And I think that's where you're going to have the most advantage in this, is that as time goes on, if you're good at building up momentum and showing people this is why we're going to the Supreme Court, this is the potential precedents we could be setting, this is what they did to us, it was wrong, and we're the underdogs, will you back us on this? That's a message that resonates with the Australian spirit, I believe.
Yeah, 100%. Thanks for joining us tonight, Nick. I know you've been on other webinars, you've been flat out all day, so thanks for taking the time tonight to join us. Paul, if you've got a wish for 2025, other than stay out of jail, What are you wishing for?
I'm not sure. I guess it's a bit of a difficult one. I haven't really thought about it. I'm just in survival mode.
Yeah,
Um,
I understand that too. That's probably a really good way of explaining where you've been for the last couple of years. It's been survival mode, and I've seen up close and personal just how damaging that can be at times for you. And it's not the only thing that you're struggling with in your life. Obviously, you've had 3 injuries of some significance, and that's left you with certain limitations in things you can do. So I only hope for you, mate, the 2025 results in a trial, or results in us not even getting through the doors. I hope they throw it out while we're standing on the steps of the courthouse. But if not, then a successful outcome there. And my goal is to help you get that truck back in 2025.
Well, I guess ideally it'd be nice to see it all resolved, and I guess not only resolved, but for Australia, I think the people that are effectively acting, unlawfully, in my opinion, against me, really need to probably be held accountable, or they'll just do it to the next person. I won't be the first. I won't be the last. And that's the worst thing. Is it's one thing if once my thing's resolved, but it's the next thing is the next person they do it to. And I think certainly the community need to get behind, and I'm sure a lot of them would love to, probably just not sure how to, but get behind somehow having these people held accountable, having possibly maybe laws changed. I don't know. Obviously, there's a lot of people trying to do that, but it also seems to be a difficult thing in the spot Australia's at now. It's kind of gone so far down. I think half of Australia is in too much disbelief to actually be able to comprehend it, and the other half of the Australians that have had the experience, or had friends that have had the experience, are probably all struggling in their own situations. And I think that's, I guess, one of the long-term plans, most likely what's happened with the powers to be, has been, slowly changing society. So if they don't concentrate on paying their mortgage and instead of being involved in the community, then they unfortunately are out on the streets. And at the end of the day, they've got to put their wife, kids, family first. But yeah, it's obviously a dirty game that the powers to be have been playing.
Yeah, well, fingers crossed it comes to an end for you all in 2025. Michael, I guess that leaves us with what is the bill looking like. Thankfully, you now seem to have got a bunch of lawyers on the case who are actually interested in fighting the case. It happens to be Nick's lawyers. So, we heard from him that it was $250,000. I know you have a fairly significant sum already, but it's not $100,000. Where are you in the hunt for this money, and how fast do you need it?
Yeah, that's a bit of an interesting one. We've got a fair amount raised, as can be seen if you go to the freedomtruck.au website, which is where people can support the whole process and this fight for justice, and hopefully setting some good precedents for the longer term, and hopefully reduce the chance of this happening to other people in the future. But yeah, Nick alluded to the costs that even just one of his cases was, which was over $200,000, $250,000. This case, to get the actual legal defence through a trial, and prepping for trial is shaping up to about a couple $100,000 itself, which is bigger than previously thought, mainly due to the case being a bit more involved than previously thought as well. With and actually, one of the good things is the number of witnesses that are available. That all pretty much haven't found anyone from that day that's not in favour of Paul and not supportive of Paul and what happened, and feel like he was not trying to do anything unreasonable or harm anyone or anything like that. So all those statements sort of definitely back up Paul's innocence there, I believe. But yeah, no, definitely a lot of funds to be raised in a fairly short period of time, like weeks, essentially. Trial scheduled for the 3rd of February at this point. So there's a lot of work to be done between now and then, and a lot of funds to be found to be able to make that possible. But it's one of those things. People go, "Oh, can't you use this person that might do it for free and that person that might do it for free?" The reality is that's just not practical in a case of such high stakes as this. And if we want to actually do justice for the country, that would be detrimental anyway, because you just you can't have that type of lack of experience in a Supreme Court over a 3-4 week trial period. 20 days in court is a fairly
The Director of Public Prosecutions in Canberra at the time is a gentleman by the name of Shane Drumgold. He's since been resigned from that position and has started a private practice after he was banned from practicing at the bar for some of the actions that he took while heading up the DPP. Now, we know from some of the interactions that we've had in different parts of Paul's case that this Shane Drumgold has instigated himself into this case quite significantly. Have you thought of avenues yet about chasing that bastard down, either civilly or in this trial?
I don't really have don't really know the details of all that fully, but certainly on paper it looks like he seemed to have a fairly strong interest in the truck seizure. It seems it's a strange set of circumstances, and certainly seems to be a completely ridiculous action and attack on somebody over circumstances that don't relate, like what actually happened at the time of the event versus what it's been turned into from a legal attack is two completely different things. And I think that's evidenced by the fact that they the charges started off a lot smaller and then just gradually got created into a much bigger scenario than it ever was at the start. And if it was as bad as it's made to sound now, you would have applied those charges within days or a week, not 2 months and 10 months and things like that. That just
I agree.
Smells of severe lawfare and borderline corruption, I would say.
I couldn't agree more. All right, boys, we'll leave it there. I want to wish you both a very happy 2025. Paul, in whatever part of the world you happen to be in at the moment, I hope you have a good one, mate. And that 2025 keeps you out of jail, brings a lot of smiles to your face. And I look forward to catching up with you when next time in the same place you happen to be.
Thank you, Carl, and thanks to everybody that's been supporting me over these 3 years. It's been a big journey, and it's obviously makes all the difference when you've got people supporting you. So I appreciate it.
Good on you, mate. Have a great new year, and don't go out and party too hard.
Thanks for your time, and everyone please share the interviews with everybody else, or your friend circle and online.
Absolutely. And briefly, I want to touch on something with you quickly. Another one of your loves is four-wheel driving and off-road driving. The police now seem to be policing the speed limits of four-wheel drivers. I've only heard about this in the last day or so. Do you know much about it?
No, I haven't come across that one yet. In what circumstance? Is this on beaches or is it?
No, forest areas, forest tracks, limited to 40 kilometers an hour in certain track conditions. And they've got drones and helicopters and all sorts of things flying around, I imagine, hinterland areas, trying to catch people doing the wrong thing.
Yeah. Can't they sort of worry about the real problems in the world? Like
You'd
people running around stabbing people and people running around driving into people and all those sorts of things. They don't really happen on dirt tracks out in the bush.
You're right about that. But anyway, the police have a whole different set of objectives by the sound of it. Anyway, mate, you and...
could be more about another cash grab.
Yeah, exactly right. You and Tanya enjoy your new year, mate, and I hope to catch up with you very shortly.
Thank you.
Cheers, mate. That's Michael and Paul Offe, the Freedom Truck owners. And if you can help, of course, Vince has been putting up the website, the Fundly website, where you can go and donate and help them in their goal to try and keep Paul out of prison. Very quickly, there are a couple of little things I wanted to show you tonight. This is probably the beginning one. Australia is facing a water crisis due to mass immigration. We're going to need dams. This country's always needed dams. The political environment is not in favour of dams because it means, people's land has to be bought and resumed and drowned. So we can't get enough dams, I don't think, really, in this country. We do certainly need another one in this part of the world or further north, but I'm sure they're required all over the country. But we don't have forward-thinking governments, unfortunately. We've got a lot of morons, but not forward-thinking governments. This is something that we're going to talk about in the not-too-distant future. If you're not aware of what the Rome Statute is, go and look it up. And Australia signed it on September the 1st, 2002. If you want to do a little bit of research, go and check that one out. We'll talk about that in the not-too-distant future. I was talking to some people over the last couple of days who've been telling me about the deaths that they've experienced in their friendship and family group over the last 12 months or so. Here's another one today. Another 30-year-old suffered a stroke in the shower, now paralyzed for life, potentially. A lot of the people who are starting to have these strokes are not surviving. That's probably a good thing in some cases, if that's what you can expect. 2025 is meant to be a very telling year for those people who've had the squirty thing. And it's where the worst of the results for those infected are likely to be seen. So steel yourself for that in 2024. Elon Musk, well, I don't know if this is a real tweet or not, but stop holding it back. Let it all out. Let it all out. Let it all out if you can. That would be my advice. In the chat tonight, I did star a couple of comments because Sab, thank you for gifting 5 memberships, dude. Really appreciate it. And Vince, we might have to think about that sponsorship idea that Nick was talking about, because I really do prefer that model than the one we're currently running at the moment. Kev, Aussie Cossack, any help with money and getting Paul in his court cases? He was the main instigator pushing the young bloke forward. Well, it wasn't just the instigator. A lot of the video evidence will provide factual clarity as to the instructions the police gave the Aussie Cossack and how that was translated in English to Paul. But Paul was very, very, very busy, even traveling at 5 kilometers an hour in a big heavy vehicle like that with so many people around. It really is a very difficult thing to drive. I can't overstate that, the significance of just how hard it is to drive when there's a lot of people very close to your vehicle, and it's a big, heavy vehicle. All right, folks. Collective X. I don't know whether or not you're using the term legend there facetiously or not. I am not a legend, but I do enjoy it. If you enjoy it, great to have you on. And I think you said that you're a first-time viewer, or you've been watching for a while, first time in the chat. Go back, watch. There's plenty of good shows. I particularly like the ones where we follow the underwater tunnels under the oceans. But, that's, if I had to pick a favorite, that'd be up there. Can't trust all the videos. No, I hope that a lot of you are getting very used to being able to pick the difference between AI and a real video. There are ways and means of doing it. In fact, we might even do a show on it so that I can show you what's going on there. The Cossack is a communist. Thanks, chill out. Well, look, he's trying to offer himself up, and I don't think the Russian government, I haven't heard, maybe they have made a decision. He's offered himself up in a trade, a prisoner trade, for the Australian teacher that's been caught fighting as a mercenary for Ukraine. To what benefit? The Russians have a mercenary who will have some battle information that may or may not be useful to them, stuff they don't already know already. I probably doubt that, but what does the Aussie Cossack bring? He brings a bit of information about the weather in Sydney. That's about it. So I don't know that the Russians would find much value in that trade. And then when they get him there, what are they going to do with him? The Aussie Cossack is of no use to Russia if he's in Russia, because he'll lose whatever audience he currently has here. And Russia is a very large place. He might be able to, be the Aussie star on TV over there. He could probably generate himself quite a good income. I'm not sure how Mrs. Cossack feels about going to Russia to live, considering that she and her family are all here. But, stranger things have happened. I just find it strange that the Cossack would offer himself up. Well, he calls himself a political prisoner, and he is in no way a political prisoner. He ran to the consulate, as we explained in a show the other day. I think when I was talking with Guru, I don't think he was treated fairly at all. He really was given no choice, either to go to jail or try and stay out of jail. And this is the way he chose to do that. The jail sentence that he was given in his absence, I think, was 12 months for an assault charge that wasn't really an assault. If anybody was attempted to be assaulted, it was him, by an elderly gentleman with a flag with a point on the end of it, trying to charge the Cossack up a set of stairs. He was fighting from a very poor position, and he wasn't hit. He was fended off and missed his footing back down those stairs, being a man of significant age, and fell and hit his head. They've called that assault. Wow, this is going to get fun. You can read that one for yourself, folks, but this is going to get fun. All right, I've had enough talking tonight. That'll give me something to look forward to. The Collective X. How interesting. Yes, I do have some interesting videos, but some I haven't shared. Many, in fact, I haven't shared here. Because, well, if I did that, you'd never see me again, I don't think. Either on a channel or possibly in real life. There are interesting videos out there, folks. I can't wait to show you more of them, but we're going to need a lot more control of our police forces and public prosecution departments before some of the stuff I've got I can show you publicly. And some of it you just don't want to see. Some of it you do better not to see. But you need to be aware, and you need to understand it is real. The world is not a very nice place at times. And it's full of dickhead drivers.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back. Does anybody else want to stay? Let's ride!